Hello again. Today we are taking a look at chapter 15, which hopefully you've read or will read soon in your textbook, in an effort to continue our Unit I on the executive branch. Today we're going to look specifically at the bureaucracy that has been created in order to sustain and to carry out and execute the laws of the land in such a large scale. What is a bureaucracy? Well, a bureaucracy, oftentimes we think of a large, cumbersome administration, but it's three things that you must note. One, it's hierarchical. There's always somebody at the top, and then another one down, and everyone knows who to report to. Moving upwards, you know exactly who to report to. Thus is a bureaucracy. Job specialization. Your job as a cog in the wheel is to do exactly what is expected, and very clear formalized rules on how to proceed, and that's how business can get done in such a large country such as America. You must have a finely oiled bureaucratic machine. Very much formalized rules, job specialization, and hierarchical control seems to be the type of bureaucracy that can function in such a large country. We understand that we are tiny and compared to such a large bureaucracy as the federal government, with tens of thousands of employees and trillions of dollars in budget. But we understand then that this government has been ordained by God and receives that authority as administration over the government, and they therefore serve God in His providence, as we mentioned in the last lecture. We confess then that they serve God, and they obviously keep outward society order, and therefore do inadvertently benefit the church and allow us to continue our work. Also, the spheres of authority. God has given authority unto our administration to execute laws here in America, but not in Canada, for example. That's called the concept of sphere sovereignty, the biblical view. Also, authority over the area. God has given them authority in a similar fashion that your parents have been given authority over you, but not over your friends. So your parents don't set their curfew or their rules because of the concept of sphere sovereignty, in which the area that God has given them authority. The major elements then that we're going to be looking at for the purposes of this lesson are the major departments. And those are found on pages 426 and 427 in your textbook. We're going to be doing some projects on those. The State Department, Department of Defense, Department of the Treasury, Education, so on. All these different departments that are headed by a Secretary of, except for the judicial, that's by the Attorney General. All the other ones are Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of so forth. These are called departments that carry out and execute the bureaucratic work of the administration. So please read over this. We're not going to go into much detail of the lesser known agencies and so on that you read about here on this slide, but you should read about those in your textbook. The EOP, the Executive Office of the President, is another major part of that administration, which housed in the White House itself. The National Security Council, advising the President on those issues. The Office, OMB, Office of Management and Budget, very instrumental in coming up with the budget. And of course, the budget shows where the focus is, where you want to put the money into each part of the administration. Economic advisors, drug control, and so on. The West Wing is where the president and the closest advisors would work. You can see the Oval Office where the president normally works, the vice president, chief of staff, and so on. Cabinet meetings can take place here in the West Wing. The residency in the East Wing is when many of the smaller little cubicles with thousands and thousands of workers who have that, like we talked about in the bureaucracy, specialized jobs with very formalized rules, work very hard in little cubicles working on budgets or national security, different things like that. But in the Oval Office is quite large and comfortable. Many times you've probably seen a president working in the Oval Office, meeting, conducting, hearing reports from advisors, discussing policy, different things of this nature. So this is a very common occurrence in the part of the administration. The executive departments then, as we mentioned earlier, each one has a secretary of, which is then a member of the cabinet, close advisor to the president. The independent agencies, there's numerous ones. Again, you can read about all these smaller agencies in your textbook. The civil service, those who work in the government, in this bureaucracy, used to be what was called a patronage or a buddy system, or, to the victor go the spoil system. Nowadays, since the Pendleton Act, you now have to take a civil service exam, and it's now more based on merit. You have to earn a position in one of those bureaucratic jobs, of course, unless you're appointed by the president to one of the larger ones. Civil service today, as you see, is based on merit, political activities. Once you become a employee of the federal government, you cannot use your office or your cell phone or your government-owned property to try to advance one party or the other while you're at work. Now, you could advance your party on your own free time, but you cannot use it to help and assist during your job in the federal government.